Hi, I'm Kari West, and I'm doing my first book review on the book On Killing: The Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society, which is written by Dave Grossman. I read this entire book cover to cover, every word on every page. Overall, I would give this book a solid 8. I feel that it was very well written. It was very easy to read. I didn't feel like there were really any dry parts where I got bored or tired of reading it. I actually read this book in one sitting. Took me several hours. It is, let me see, 339 pages long. Um, I felt like this was a very informative text as I am not someone that is an active person in the military. I don't have any close family members that are currently active in the military. Um, it was very cool to get to read actual veteran stories, whether it been on actual killing and dealing with the trauma and the guilt years and years later, the ones that took pride in not killing someone. This book really tackled different angles of a soldier and the decision making and things of that nature. There were a lot of actual studies done. One that I had actually wrote down because I thought it was very intriguing. Dr. Stanley Milgram's famous study at Yale University on obedience and aggression. It turns out that 65% could be readily manipulated into inflicting seemingly lethal electrical charge onto a stranger. And it was just talking about how basically just some guy in a white lab coat with a clipboard could say to do something, and just that authoritarian presence could, I don't know if manipulate's the right word, but basically could make someone do something even if they didn't really want to. It talked about how a businessman that came in, nice and friendly and things like that, um, ended up going all the way through to the full extent and left feeling the guilt and was shaky and like um, visible trauma. So that was actually very surprising. And from that, it kind of dove into how soldiers on the battlefield that didn't have that ability to just kill someone, they felt this resistance to not pull the trigger. And whenever their sergeant or whoever, whatever authoritarian figure came over and told them to do something, they would do it, or either they would mock do it, as they say, mock fight in the text. And as soon as that presence left, they no longer did it, obviously. So that was very interesting to read about, and also how it talked about the different ranges of fighting, and like it talked about close range and how it was a lot harder for someone to actually kill because you can visibly see your enemy, and it's a very personal thing to do to take someone's life when they're a human being just like you. They're scared just like you. And it all it talked about how, I don't remember if it was the author that did this or if it was one of the veteran stories that discussed how they were in some kind of tunnel and he went underneath and he turned his flashlight on and he saw an enemy that was like eating rice or something like that. And he kind of had that moment where he was like, he's a human being just like me, and basically decided to turn a blind eye and let him go. And he later found out that he was pretty sure it was him that got shot. It was some guy that was found in the tunnels 500 yards away or something like that. Um, So it was interesting. It was an interesting take to see, to read about something like that, and how it talks about again how personal it is to make the decision to kill someone, because when you're at close range, you can see the blood, you can feel the blood, you can hear the screams or the last breath, whereas pilots in the air that are dropping bombs don't feel um, either feel the guilt, if any at all, because they're not. It's not a personal thing. They drop a bomb and it might kill someone or it might not. Uh, they're not hearing the screams, they're not seeing the blood and things like that. So, again, that was really interesting to read about. And throughout this text, it talks about different wars. It talks about World War One, World War Two, and the Vietnam War and other wars, but I decided to make a lesson plan developed from the Vietnam War because I don't feel like this book would be a great um, topic or theme because I don't feel like that's very appropriate in an elementary setting, especially. So I thought, well, I could just pull one of the wars and make a lesson plan developed off of that. So I decided to go with the Vietnam War. Um, my lesson objectives are to discuss the cause of the Vietnam War, explain the impact the war had on the United States and American society, discuss relevant events, legislation, and agreements as it relates to the Vietnam War, and to describe how the war ended. The materials that I plan to use are copies of the Vietnam War Causes, Conflicts, and Effects lesson, uh, incorporate computers and the internet connectivity and projector capabilities, and an online digital timeline. So some of the instructions that I plan to use is to begin the lesson by asking students to discuss their thoughts about the Vietnam War and what they know. Explain the lesson will explore the causes and impact of the Vietnam War, and I'll distribute the Vietnam War causes and conflicts and effects lesson. I also plan to incorporate a video, an educational video talking about the Vietnam War and pausing it periodically and asking questions like why was the Vietnam War considered a proxy war? Explain the purpose of the Geneva Conference and Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Um, Describe the challenges faced by the United States in 1963. I've got a list of questions. Then I'll incorporate an activity prior to class, um, search the internet and identify a digital timeline tool. And I'll begin this activity by asking students to discuss suggestions on how the Vietnam War could have been prevented. And then I'll explain that this exercise will further solidify their understanding of the war's events. And then I'll divide the class into groups and assign them different time periods each. And what they're going to do is they're going to explain the website the class will use for the digital timeline. I'll ensure groups include relevant visuals and short audio and video if possible. And afterwards, I'll allow each group to present their timeline in chronological order. That is it.